Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Nathan arrests Laura for homicide after hitting with her car? Henry Hank Dalton could be a goner. He's as bad as Drew Kane but without the connections to legacy characters, meaning he's much more expendable. We predict he is about to be the subject of a whodunit, based on several clues. Let's investigate those hints and the characters with the best chance of escaping the Neanderthal. Is Dalton about to be a whodunit? For starters, spoilers strongly indicate that a distracted and distraught Mayor Laura Collins could accidentally run over the slimy professor. She has motive since he framed her grandson Rocco Falconeri for destroying his insidious lab, but there are others who would not cry over his demise. Dalton is on Jen Sidwell's last nerve and he would not hesitate to do away with the pest. Red-hot spoilers suggest that during the week of November 17th to 21st, Sidwell's rage may flare up, leading him to instruct Pascal to fire the professor. Will Sidwell dispatch Dalton to the other side? In the meantime, it's a bad idea for Laura to publicly threaten Dalton. On top of this, when the election results are revealed, it could be curtains for Laura and good news for scam artist Ezra Boyle. It appears that Laura gets in her car later, distraught, and crosses paths with Pascal, who throws Dalton into the path of her car. However, if this is the case, what a coincidence, Sidwell would simultaneously solve two issues by killing Dalton, who was problematic, and compromising Laura. Will Laura pay the price? The shocking discovery that Laura makes on November 20th is suggested by spoilers. Will she find that she's hit Dalton with her car and panic? Hitting anyone would be cause for angst, but Laura has shown that she has reason to want harm to come to Dalton. Previews reveal that Nathan West discovers something nearby and that Laura is found crying in her car. Regardless of the outcome, Laura doesn't look good from this. When Laura runs over Dalton, chaos breaks out. What comes next? Laura Collins may inadvertently run over Professor Henry Hank Dalton. Is it possible that the professor will end up being thrown in front of the mayor's vehicle? Sidwell's becoming increasingly impatient with Dalton. Jen Sidwell's patience is rapidly diminishing when it comes to the unruly Dalton and the chaos he continues to create. With Dalton having framed Rocco Falconeri for the destruction of the lab and attracting excessive attention to their research, he could very well be a man on borrowed time. During the week of November 17th to 21st, we can expect Sidwell's temper to ignite once more. It's likely that we will witness Sidwell officially reach his breaking point with Dalton, leading to Pascal potentially receiving orders to eliminate the professor for good. In the meantime, Laura appears to be getting ready for a very public showdown with Dalton, in which she will undoubtedly make serious threats to him. Dalton framed Rocco and Laura is livid. She might have to warn Laura's grandson that Dalton will face the consequences of his actions because he has framed Rocco and left him in absolute terror. Later on, General Hospital spoilers indicate that the results of the election will be disclosed, which means Laura could be facing some unwelcome news. This entire Rocco situation might just be one scandal too many for the mayor to handle, so we'll have to wait and see if Ezra Boyle pulls off a victory. At some point, Laura will get into her car, and it's likely she'll be feeling quite distraught as she drives. With Rocco's anguish weighing heavily on her and the looming possibility of a mayoral defeat, Laura is in for a truly challenging night. From bad to worse, Dalton's pushed in front of Laura's car by Pascal? That evening could take a turn for the worse if Pascal decides to throw Dalton directly into the path of Laura's vehicle. Sidwell might see this as an opportunity to eliminate Dalton while simultaneously getting back at Laura. If Sidwell's attempts to secure Sonny Corinthos' peers are thwarted in the end, he's bound to be furious. Sidwell may respond with significant retaliation, which means this Dalton situation could be interconnected with that. On November 20th, Laura is set to make a shocking discovery, potentially realizing that she has struck someone with her car. Laura is concerned that she will be charged with vehicular homicide. If it turns out to be Dalton, she might worry that it will appear as though she did it intentionally. The show has released an image showing Laura in tears inside her car while Nathan West shines a flashlight on something in the vicinity. Could Nathan be examining Dalton's lifeless body after Laura accidentally runs him over? General Hospital spoilers suggest that some deadly drama involving Dalton is on the horizon, so stay tuned for updates on any surprises that may unfold. Laura Collins never imagined her long, complicated life in Port Charles would lead her to the horrifying moment when Nathan West placed her under arrest for homicide, yet that's exactly where she found herself after the chaotic chain of events that unfolded on the night Henry Hank Dalton met his grim fate on Queens Point Road, a night steeped in political tension, family heartbreak, and the mounting consequences of one man's ruthless ambition. In the days leading up to the accident, Dalton had become a toxin in Port Charles, despised by everyone from Mayor Collins to Jen Sidwell himself, but Laura's hatred for him, though justified, had always been tempered by her sense of right and wrong, at least until he framed her grandson, young Rocco Falconeri, for the destruction of his illegal lab, humiliating her family and sending Laura into a spiral of guilt, fury, and desperate determination. Entire conversations in City Hall revolved around how to neutralize Dalton's growing influence, while whispers of Sidwell's simmering anger suggested that even the crime lord's patience had run out. He didn't tolerate incompetence, and Dalton's arrogance, failures, and messy connections were becoming liabilities Sidwell could no longer allow. Rumors circulated that Sidwell had ordered Pascal, his shadowy, cold-eyed enforcer, to clean up the Dalton mess before the election results came in, and if the whispers were true, Dalton's days were numbered long before Laura ever slipped behind the wheel of her car that night. Yet fate, or perhaps someone far more cunning, arranged matters so Laura became the perfect scapegoat, the ideal patsy who could take the fall for the professor's demise while simultaneously clearing Sidwell's slate of problems and opening a political pathway for conman Ezra Boyle, whose victory hinged on Laura's destruction. The day unfolded like a slow-burning disaster. Laura, already under immense stress from the contentious election and Dalton's relentless taunting, found herself lashing out at him publicly, an outburst that would later become Exhibit A in Nathan West's case against her. Onlookers saw her point at Dalton, voice trembling with rage, warning him that he had gone too far. Her threat, though hardly literal, echoed through the courthouse and into the rumor mill, painting her as a woman pushed past her moral breaking point. As night fell, Laura climbed into her car emotionally shattered, tears still clinging to her lashes from a heated argument with an advisor who warned her that the election results looked grim and that Ezra Boyle was likely to snatch the mayor's seat from her grip. Heartbroken, betrayed, and overwhelmed, she drove aimlessly through the rain-slicked streets, barely able to see the road through her fogged windshield and the sting of tears. What she didn't know was that at that same moment, Pascal had cornered Dalton on the desolate stretch near the bluff, shoving him toward the road with cruel efficiency. Witnesses would later report hearing raised voices, a scuffle, then a sudden scream, but Laura heard none of it. All she registered was a blur of movement as someone, was hurled directly into her car's path. The impact was sickening, instant, unavoidable. Her tires screeched. Her heart stopped. And when her vehicle jolted to a halt, she sat frozen, trembling, unable to comprehend whether she had hit a deer, a person, or the embodiment of her worst nightmare. By the time she stumbled out of her car, disoriented and panicked, the road was silent, rain washed across the pavement, masking footprints and blood alike. She saw nothing, no body, no witness, nothing to confirm the horrible suspicion clawing at her chest. Terrified she had struck Dalton, or someone else equally vulnerable, she collapsed into her driver's seat and sobbed, utterly unaware that someone was watching her. This is where Nathan West enters, calm, dutiful, instinctive as ever, responding to an anonymous tip that something bad had happened on Queens Point Road. When he arrived, he found Laura in her car, shaking uncontrollably, her hands clutching the steering wheel as if it were the only thing keeping her anchored to reality. Nearby, his flashlight caught something half buried in the wet leaves, Dalton's broken glasses, one lens shattered, a smear of blood marking the frame. And just like that, the narrative shifted. It didn't matter that Nathan respected Laura. It didn't matter that she had been one of the most morally grounded figures in Port Charles for decades. Circumstantial evidence wrapped around her like chains, the public threat, the emotional instability, the suspiciously timed accident, the discovery at the scene, and her inability to provide a clear account of what she had hit. Worse, Dalton was nowhere to be found. Early theories suggested he crawled away, but others whispered darker possibilities, that Sidwell's people dragged the body into hiding, ensuring Laura remained the sole suspect. Nathan, torn between duty and compassion, approached the trembling mayor with steady resolve, explaining that he had no choice but to take her into custody until the investigation clarified her involvement. His voice was gentle, but the weight of his words crushed her. To Laura, the moment felt unreal, anesthetized, dreamlike, as if she were watching someone else live out a nightmare written by her enemies. She could hardly speak as he read her rights. She could only think of Rocco and how the scandal could destroy him, how the truth, whatever it was, seemed just out of her reach. Spoilers hinted that she would discover something gobsmacking on November 20th, and now that revelation loomed ominously. Would she learn she truly struck Dalton, or that she had been set up to believe she had? The more authorities searched, the worse her situation looked. Tire marks suggested sudden braking. Fragments of Dalton's coat were found near the guardrail. And Nathan's discovery of Dalton's personal effects sealed the early judgment against her. But inconsistencies crept into the investigation too, strange footprints, drag marks, signs of a second person on the scene. Evidence Laura couldn't have produced. Evidence someone intentionally removed or tampered with. Evidence pointing directly toward Sidwell's involvement. Yet with Dalton potentially dead, missing, or hidden, Laura remained the easiest suspect to condemn. As she sat in the interrogation room, hands trembling, mind spiraling, she wondered whether fate had betrayed her, or whether Jen Sidwell had orchestrated her downfall with the precision of a master puppeteer. If Dalton had been shoved into the road, as clues suggested, then she was not a murderer but a pawn in a larger game. Still, the town buzzed with speculation. Some believed she snapped under pressure. Others believed she was being framed. And some, quietly but confidently, believed Dalton wasn't truly dead at all, merely injured and in hiding, plotting his next manipulative move. But one thing was certain, Laura's life, legacy, and reputation hung in the balance, and Nathan West's fateful decision to arrest her marked the beginning of what promised to be one of Port Charles's most explosive whodunits in recent history. Whether she was a victim of circumstance or a carefully engineered setup, Laura would soon face the fight of her political and personal career, battling not only for her freedom but for the truth behind Dalton's disappearance, truth that could expose Sidwell, Pascal, Ezra Boyle, and perhaps even darker forces lurking in the shadows of Port Charles. Until then, she could only relive the horrifying flash of headlights, the terrible thud, and the agonizing uncertainty of whether she had accidentally taken a life, or been thrust into the center of a deadly conspiracy that would unravel every thread of her world. The hours following Laura Collins' arrest unfolded with a suffocating intensity that seemed to swallow Port Charles whole, as if the town itself held its breath while the implications of the night's events spread through every household, newsroom, and political office like shockwaves rippling across a turbulent sea. Even those who didn't support Laura in the mayoral race were stunned, because despite her recent stress, her emotional unraveling, or her heated public confrontation with Dalton, no one could reconcile the image of the seasoned, principled mayor with the accusation now hanging over her like a noose. Laura had survived kidnappings, cults, riots, political coups, and manipulative masterminds in her decades-long history in Port Charles, but nothing, not even Cassadine's schemes, had prepared her for the crushing reality of being accused of killing a man she despised but had never meant to harm. At the PCPD, Nathan West worked meticulously, but not without inner conflict. He respected Laura immensely. She had been a mentor to him early in his career, offering guidance that shaped his sense of justice during his early years on the force. Yet evidence, even circumstantial, pointed toward her involvement. Nathan approached the investigation with impartiality, but his heart warred against his obligations, especially as every new detail seemed to tighten the circle around her. Surveillance footage placed Laura's car heading in the direction of Queens Point Road at the precise time the anonymous 911 call was placed. A neighbor reported hearing a loud bang and seeing a vehicle matching her car's description speeding away. Another witness, whose identity Nathan kept sealed, claimed they heard Laura screaming Dalton's name earlier in the day. The narrative forming in law enforcement circles painted Laura as an emotionally compromised politician who had finally snapped. But Nathan also saw what others didn't, or didn't want to acknowledge. The crime scene was too chaotic. Too messy. Too convenient. Drag marks suggested someone else moved Dalton's body. Tire tracks from a second vehicle overlapped the area where the collision supposedly occurred. Strange boot prints, far larger than Laura's, circled the site. Nathan couldn't shake the suspicion that the alleged accident had been engineered with surgical precision. And as he scoured reports, one name resurfaced again and again, like a virus infecting every part of the case: Pascal. Pascal was no stranger to Nathan. The lieutenant had been keeping tabs on the man for months due to his connections with Jens Sidwell, a kingpin whose influence extended far beyond Port Charles's criminal underbelly. Sidwell had a knack for removing obstacles, controlling narratives, and rearranging lives like pieces on a chessboard, all without leaving fingerprints. If Sidwell truly wanted Dalton out of the picture, he wouldn't hesitate to create a scenario that served multiple purposes, eliminating Dalton while destroying Laura's political career in one blow. Nathan knew Sidwell, and Sidwell knew how to twist fate until innocent people were caught in the gears of his machinery. Meanwhile, Laura sat alone in the interrogation room, its cold gray walls amplifying her isolation as she waited for her lawyer. She felt as though hours had passed, days, even. Every tick of the clock reminded her that her life was on the brink of destruction. Her mind replayed the accident in agonizing flashes. The blur in the headlights. The sickening thump. The overwhelming panic. Had she hit Dalton? Had it been someone else? Had she imagined the entire thing? The trauma left her with fragmented memory, and she hated that she couldn't provide Nathan, or herself, with answers. Her thoughts drifted to her family. To Lulu, to Kevin, to Spencer, and most of all to Rocco, the grandson whose innocence Dalton had nearly destroyed with his vicious frame-up. Laura remembered how Rocco's voice quivered when he asked whether he'd go to juvenile detention for something he didn't do. That betrayal had ignited something fierce inside her, a protective fire that Dalton had exploited, taunting her with thinly veiled threats. But no matter how furious she became, she never wanted him dead. She wanted justice. And now justice had turned its back on her. As Laura agonized in silence, news of her arrest erupted across the media like lightning striking dry brush. Leading networks ran bold headlines: Mayor Collins arrested for Dalton homicide. Opposition campaigns seized their moment, branding Laura a disturbed leader unfit for office. Ezra Boyle's team capitalized instantly, releasing statements expressing deep sorrow for the tragedy while subtly implying this was a sign Laura had lost control. The timing was too perfect. Too coordinated. Boyle's victory now seemed inevitable, especially since the election results were due within hours. If Laura was convicted, even wrongly, the office of mayor would fall into Boyle's corrupt hands, and Port Charles would become his playground. Kevin Collins, frantic and determined, stormed the PCPD demanding access to his wife, pleading that she was fragile and needed psychological support. Kevin knew the signs of emotional trauma better than anyone, and he feared Laura's guilt might consume her before the truth came out, if it ever did. Dante Falconeri, torn between his duty as a detective and his loyalty to Laura as family, tried to intervene but was removed from the case due to conflict of interest. He seethed with frustration. Someone had gone to great lengths to frame Laura, and Dante vowed privately to uncover who. Across town, Spencer Cassadine raged, convinced Sidwell orchestrated everything. He stormed the hospital demanding answers from anyone who might have seen Pascal in the area that night. Spencer was known for reckless impulsivity, and this situation pushed him to the brink. If someone didn't rein him in, he'd try to confront Sidwell himself, a move that could get him killed. Sidwell, meanwhile, sat in his luxury penthouse sipping whiskey, expression unreadable as he watched news coverage of Laura's arrest. His advisor whispered updates in his ear, but Sidwell barely responded. Only when Pascal entered, drenched from the rain, his jacket torn, did Sidwell's expression sharpen. "Did you handle it?" Sidwell asked. Pascal nodded, but tension simmered beneath his stoic mask. "Good," Sidwell replied. "Keep the body hidden. Let the mayor destroy herself." But Pascal hesitated. It was closer than planned. Someone else saw. Sidwell's glass paused midair. Who? For the first time, Pascal looked uncertain. I don't know yet. Sidwell's jaw stiffened. A loose end. And Sidwell despised loose ends. Back at the station, Nathan re-entered the interrogation room, offering Laura water and a moment of reprieve. She looked up at him, eyes swollen, voice shaky. Nathan, did I kill him?